Yes, welcome once again, everyone. Cannabis News. I'm your host, Joe Klare. It's February 19th, 2019, presented as always by the Marijuana Times. Check us out at marijuanatimes.org. Click that video tab at marijuanatimes.org to find the show. A bunch of great articles there as well. Social media links and more. Go check it out. Today we're talking about adolescent marijuana use and whether or not it leads to depression later on in life. Also, a judge had something to say about Wal-Mart firing an Arizona medical marijuana patient, and medical marijuana in Utah. Some big healthcare providers are giving their doctors some guidelines when it comes to recommending medical cannabis. Talk about all of that coming up. But first, of course, Cannabis News is brought to you by Natureside, nature-side.com, and their organic, all-natural pesticides. Make sure you go check them out. If you're a grower in a state where it is legal, you don't want to use banned pesticides, you do want to grow safe and poison-free, you want to use regulatory-compliant pesticides, check out the organic, all-natural pesticides at Natureside, nature-side.com. Check them out. Side is spelled C-I-D-E. Whoops, that wasn't right. There we go. They are awesome. No matter what size the graphic is. This first story from marijuanatimes.org by yours truly. Does adolescent marijuana use lead to depression later in life? Basically, there was a study published in the journal JAMA Psychiatry purports to show that, quote, adolescent cannabis consumption was associated with increased risk of developing depression and suicidal behavior later in life, even in the absence of a premorbid condition. Basically, there was a review of 11 studies over several years, involved over 23,000 individuals. And basically what it showed was that, well, many other studies show when it comes to this, you could see some sort of correlation between adolescent marijuana use and depression later in life, but it is not causation, even as the study researchers admit, because it very well could be that those who are depressed later in life self-medicate with cannabis or start earlier in self-medicating or feel more of a need to self-medicate, and cannabis is something that's readily available when it comes to that. Whatever happens, as I point out in the article, if you're someone who's worried about adolescents using marijuana, I don't see anybody out there advocating for 15 to 16-year-olds to be able to smoke weed legally. I've never, ever, ever seen a marijuana advocate or an anti-prohibition advocate advocate for a 15 or a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old even to use marijuana. The lowest I've ever heard as far as legal age is 18. I happen to agree that 18 should be the legal age. I mean, you're supposedly an adult at 18. The fact that you can vote and go die in a war, but you can't make a decision on whether or not you smoke a joint is a bit ridiculous to me. But no one's ever advocated for teens being able to legally use marijuana. If you're worried about teens and marijuana use, you should be for legalization. These people we're so worried about, they're all anti-legalization. They all think prohibition is doing the job when it comes to keeping kids from getting marijuana. I chuckle because it's funny. It's hilarious. Drug dealers don't check ID. That's a cliche for a reason. And data has shown in places like Colorado and Washington and nationwide that teen use is either stagnant or on the decline as marijuana laws relax, because those who sell marijuana legally have a vested interest in not selling to someone who's underage. A dealer doesn't have that interest. He doesn't care. He's already breaking the law. What does it matter? If he's selling to a 22-year-old or a 15-year-old, he's still breaking the law. But legal dispensaries and retailers, they would like to keep their license. They would like to avoid fines. So they're going to be more stringent, much more stringent when it comes to who they sell to, and therefore access for teens is reduced. And once the stigma around cannabis is lessened, I'm revolting against my parents. I'm rebelling. That feeling of it coming from marijuana dissipates, and kids will look for other ways to rebel because cannabis is just not that big of a deal. Many reasons for the fact that teen use is not going up. If you're worried about teen use, then you should be for legalization, because it's doing the job that you say you want done. Teens to use less marijuana. I mean, is that not the goal? I was told that was the goal. One of the goals, teens using less marijuana, legalization is doing that. You should be for legalization. I don't know. Somewhere along the logic train, some people fall off. This next story from PhoenixNewTimes.com. Judge rebukes Arizona Walmart for firing an employee with medical marijuana card. An Arizona Walmart location terminated an employee in 2016 who held a valid medical marijuana card after a drug test came back positive. But now a federal judge has ruled that because Walmart could not prove the employee was impaired at work, the company violated the non-discrimination provision in the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act. Very interesting story. And we see a lot of rulings like this across the country. Some go, for the medical marijuana patient, some go against. But at least in this instance in Arizona, is gone for the medical marijuana patient. Significant decision. It's a significant decision to recognize a private right of action for employment discrimination under the AMMA. Arizona U.S. District Court District Judge James L. Teelberg said last week the Walmart was not justified in firing the worker based on the company's idea that marijuana metabolites in her urine meant she must have been impaired at work. The attorney, Joshua Cardin, who runs a Scottsdale-based law firm, said Teelberg's decision was the first of its kind in Arizona. No court has officially decided whether a private right of action exists under Arizona. Under the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act, so that was a big part of the decision. The attorney Cardin said Carol Whitmire had worked for Walmart stores for about 8 years. Apparently she was injured. A bag of ice fell on her wrist while she was leveling the bags, according to the lawsuit. Of course, she was taken to urgent care, and during the drug test, they found that she had marijuana metabolites in her urine. She's been a medical marijuana card holder for approximately the last 5 years. There was no proof that she was impaired at work, and the judge has ruled in her favor that she should not have been fired for testing positive for marijuana. And I just realized I have the wrong graphic for that. What is it with me on the graphics today? That's two. I'll go weeks and weeks without a graphic snafu, and then it's just snafu away. I don't know. I got to find the balance. The balance between getting into these stories and bringing the graphics. Because directing is an important part of all this. In case you don't know, a little behind the scenes of the show. Directing is very important. You get the whole presentation, the whole package is what brings it all together. I don't know. That may seem arrogant to assume that the package is coming together, because today the package is not coming together. But when it does, it's fantastic. It's the best. It's the best. I'm sorry. Again, I have no Trump impression. That would have been the time to break it out, but I have none. So that's the graphic right there. That's the graphic I'm looking for this story about the Walmart firing the employee in Arizona. Man, sometimes the wheels come off. You got to keep going. You run on the rims until the end. That's your advice for the day. The wheels come off, skid on the axles. That's your advice, because there would be no rims if the wheels came off. You skid on the axles. That's what we're doing right now. Skidding on the axles. This last story out of Utah. I'll write the ship. I will. Fox13now.com. Intermountain Healthcare, U of U Health, to allow physicians to recommend medical cannabis. Apparently there was some hesitancy on the part of these big healthcare providers in Utah until they got some kind of regulatory guidance, if you will, when it comes to medical marijuana in Utah. After months of negotiations, Utah's largest healthcare networks will allow their physicians to recommend medical cannabis to qualifying patients. Apparently, Fox 13 obtained a memo that was written by Intermountain Healthcare Chief Physician Executive. It's a very long title. Mark Bresacher, that gives permission to doctors within the state's largest healthcare network to start recommending cannabis. After meeting with patients, their family members, and patient advocates, he wrote, and working with a committed and diverse group of colleagues at Intermountain, we've arrived at a place where we're ready to begin offering letters to patients with a qualifying medical condition as defined by the Utah Medical Cannabis Act. So, Intermountain's memo announcement, according to Fox 13, Came hours after Fox 13 reported that the University of Utah Health had said its physicians were not prohibited from recommending cannabis to qualifying patients. So good news out of Utah, because obviously the one of the big link in the chain between people getting medical marijuana access and actually, being able to purchase marijuana is the doctor. And if, as I pointed out in the story, just after the legislature passed the compromise legislation for medical marijuana in Utah, there was some hesitancy on the part of these big providers because they really didn't know what they were getting into. But apparently now things are on a more sure footing, so they're ready to start recommending people to get medical cannabis, which is a good thing. It's not the end of the line, obviously, as I've said many times, but people being able to choose legally to get some medical cannabis seems like such a simple thing, but, when you don't have something, when you don't have access to something, or you're not legally allowed to do something, or you're criminalized, in other words, for doing something, it makes a big difference. Indeed. Thank you all for checking out Cannabis News today. Thank you for checking out the Marijuana Times and marijuanatimes.org. Thank you to Nature Side, nature-side.com, and their organic, all-natural pesticides. They're awesome. You're awesome. Keep spreading the truth about cannabis with this show. We'll see you next time right here on Cannabis News.